Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Novelists Unwind. I'm here today with Suzanne Woods Fisher. Very excited to have her back. She was my guest in September 2017 when Novelists Unwind was just getting off the ground. Suzanne, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's really fun, and I'm so proud of you for having 3 years under your belt
I
now.
know.
That's impressive.
That is exciting because when I first started out, I just wasn't sure, what would happen and where to go. So it is. It's really fun to talk to so many authors, and now to be having authors come back again. That's really cool too.
Well, and it's a different skill set, I think, than the writing and editing. This is like really interactive and fast and quick, and it is communication, but people listen in a different way than they read, and so good for you.
Oh, thank you. It really is fun. I enjoy it. So we're here today to talk about your newest novel, which is quite a departure from previous novels. You're known for writing Amish and historical Amish too. And now you're writing a contemporary romance series called Three Sisters Island, which I just love the name of that. Tell us about why the switch, why you're.
Well, it happened a while ago. I love to write about the older Amish. I love that. But I also feel like I am a writer first. And so I've done actually some historical Quaker, some historical Amish, in different venues. I thoroughly enjoy just studying. It's probably why I write, probably why you write. The curiosity, is insatiable. And so my editor had this idea where she wanted me to sort of balance. She was open to having me try some other genres, and yet she wanted to take the same essence of what I write about with the Amish, which is community and faith and quirky characters, people that are deeply flawed and kind of slowly making their way forward in life, and faith is kind of defining the journey. And she wanted to find a way to make that in a coastal setting. And she said at the time, you go ahead and pick the coast, pick the setting, do whatever. And I said, that's awesome. I was so excited. And I thought, I live out in California. It would be so great to not have to be traveling to try to find all the research. So I came up with a number of places in California. And she said, awesome, love it. We're going to stay in Maine. And it turned out to be such a good decision for so many reasons. Partly, I think, because Maine is accessible. It is a place that people can go to, and everybody sort of has a picture of Maine. My dad went to college in Maine. I'm actually from the East Coast to begin with. So Maine was on my radar. It's not as if I didn't have a pretty good idea of what it would be like, what the people would be like, to a degree. But going back there, one of the things I loved so much, and I say this after doing a 3-book series set in Nantucket, and I love Nantucket. I love it so much, but it is an exclusive place. Even way back in the 1700s, it was a very, it was an island set apart for a reason, and the people went there to be away from the Puritan influence, and Quakers developed there. But Maine has it just belongs to everybody. There were just
like that.
The places I went to, you just saw a little bit of the hip and cool and the wealthy and the big old cruise ships coming in, but then also just regular folks and people on vacation and people camping. And I think for a summer book, I think my editor made a great choice. And of course, traveling to Maine is really fun. I've been a number of times and I had to just cancel. In fact, just canceled. I should be there right now.
Oh, wow.
Right now for research for more in the series. But that's a long answer to your question.
That's cool. That's so fun. I'm glad that you guys, not only do you have that background in it, but that you got to go again and travel there. That's always fun when a writer can do that, especially from one coast to the other. That's far.
Well, there's nothing like it. There's something that happens when you smell the air and you look at the sky and you see the sunsets and you get a sense of the people and the birds and the bird song. And there's just nothing like that original sourcing. So
that's so cool.
So to tell you a story a little bit about where I planted this, besides just Maine in general, I was back east on this trip, and I've been to Mount Desert Island, which everybody should go to because it's just such a wonderful place. It's, you know, Acadia was the very first national park. It's just seeing the sunrise on Cadillac Mountain, which isn't a very big mountain, but it's the first place for most of the year that the sun rises and hits the United States.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, it is really should be on everyone's list to get to at some point. It's just so special. But I went from there to more islands. So I went from an island to islands, and Maine has 3,000 of these little islands. They're not all inhabitable, but they're all so distinct and different and unique and beautiful. And some are more deeply surrounded by the frantic Atlantic, and some are more accessible and a little more of a harbor. But I found this one little island that just became the place for my book. And it's a place where try to get there, you hope the ferry shows up. And the ferry we're talking about is basically just an outboard, you know. And you can imagine when I went over and went all around the island, and you can see how isolated and lovely and beautiful in summer. I went into one of their little cafes, which doubled as a town hall, and there was a list of the people that had died through the winter on the wall.
Oh my gosh.
That they had just honored, you know. And then I noticed the bulletin board, and there were so many. This was early May a year ago, so this was looking at everything that they've been doing over the winter, and you saw just the Alcoholic Anonymous meetings. And I started to get this sense of what it was like in the winter, how truly isolated these people were to be away from the mainland 2-3 times, you know, and boy, a hard winter, what it would do to them, and how there's a reason they're that far away. There's a lot of independent streaks and yeah, great quirky characters to develop. But anyway, that's sort of the setting for Three Sisters Island. It's a little bankrupt island. And please interrupt me if I'm talking too much.
No, it's so interesting and fascinating, and just to see how too that just being there in the town hall and the bulletin boards and that little information that just sort of seeps into your head, into your heart, and then it comes out into a story, you know.
Yeah. Or the setting, at least a setting.
Yeah, and it adds that authenticity and all of that. Well, yeah, I read that. I think even in the early pages of the book, where they have to go from one island to another island to get there, like it said that, and thinking, wow, that's so crazy. I mean, if you don't have something right here on the island, you may not get it for a bit. If you have to make those kinds of trips, you know, to one island and then to the mainland, and I'm sure that takes a good part of the day.
Well, and that's a good point, because island living like that, it's partly you live without a lot, you learn to make do. Mm-hmm. And then you also, if something's brought over, it no longer becomes junk. Like one man's junk is another person's treasure. And so I have one scene where they were trying to clean things out and we're trying to find a dump yard, and the locals looked at them with like, what's the junk? What are you talking about? We'll take it. But, and I don't mean to make it sound like people just collect junk, but it's just more like that creative, you know, figure it out, make it work, duct tape it together kind of thinking. Well, to give you a little bit of background to the story, so I have a story about a dad about your age and my age, and he has 3 young adult daughters, and he knows they're growing estranged, and he knows he has to do something to kind of bring them back together. So when he was in college, he had gone to this summer camp called Camp Kicking Moose off of Three Sisters Island, all fictitious, but not unusual in Maine to have these little camps, you know. Yeah. It is a place of summer camps, and it's going bankrupt, and he ends up buying it for a song, and he is so excited. He's throwing his life savings into it. He thinks this is the best idea. His daughters think he's crazy that he's lost it. The 3 girls are so different. They're radically different, but they come to the island to try to figure out how to untangle this mess their dad has gotten them all into. And the funny thing is, you just don't want to count this dad out too fast, because there's something about an island, and little by little, it really speaks to each one in a different way, kind of healing some loss in their life and bringing them together. And that's how the story begins in On a Summer Tide. I have a copy.
Oh, I'm glad you have the books. Yeah.
This is the first one. This is book 1, On a Summer Tide. That was out last April, last May. And then this is the one that just came out. This is called Awning Coastal.
Beautiful covers. I mean, the covers
Oh
are
my goodness.
gorgeous.
They're so pretty. You just want to kind of walk in.
You do.
I know.
Do.
I mean, what could be better than a summer day on a beach in the East Coast?
And this book is about Maddie. She's the middle daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Book 1 was about the eldest daughter. Essentially, they all have a point of view in the stories. Book 2 is the middle daughter, Maddie, and she is a newly certified marriage family therapist who is not married and doesn't have a family. And she also has profound anxiety. So she's worked so hard to really get a handle on her panic attacks and her anxiety. They all had sort of a traumatic event in their family history, and it affected all of them in a different way. But Maddie she's kind of your typical middle, tries to fix everybody, tries to keep things controlled and contained, and ends up having such anxiety attacks. But she's got a handle on it. She's ready. Life is about to begin for her. So exciting. And the day she opens up her practice, she hears a commotion outside, and everyone's just running down to the dock to see what's going on. And it turns out there's a skydiver floating in. And the closer he gets, the more she realizes she recognizes him. And it turns out to be the new pastor for their little startup church, which is a rocking church. I mean, it's really exciting, really fun. That is not terribly typical of the Upper East Coast to have these little churches. But this church is thriving, but they can't find a pastor because they basically have no budget and they live way out in nowhere. But this one guy did agree to come, and it turns out to be the one man Maddie never wanted to see again in her whole life, ever. They have bad history together. So time to panic again.
Yeah, that's so cute on the back cover, the way it says that. It's like her panic, time to panic again. And his name, because his name is Rick O'Shea, and somewhere I read where you said to say that name 3 times fast. So I did. So everybody watching, say Ricochet, Ricochet, Ricochet.
Keeps coming back. I think what I love is that I thought that was so funny, and I tried to be so clever about it to, like, he was Ricky in her. One of the things I did in this book is have some flashbacks. So back to how the girls kind of became the way they were. And there's a lot of history with her and Ricky growing up. They parted ways at senior ball, and it was not a good part to partying. But so I thought, oh yeah, Richard is who the pastor's coming is Richard. I don't want to make it too trite, but when you think of Ricochet, it's just so funny. My editors missed it. They never caught that.
Really?
I love it.
Yeah, I laughed at that. I thought that was so adorable. And so that was really a clever thing.
Thank you.
That really was. That was. And then, go ahead.
A lot of the story is really about healing and about coming together. And I think that comes a little bit about the writing of the Amish I've done, because I think they take so much seriously about keeping short accounts in our life and making amends. And it's been a theme that I found as I studied the older Amish and really tried to get past the buggies and bonnets and beards to see, why were these people different? You know, we're all believers and our faith is the same. So what makes them different? I know I'm going in out of shadow.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay forward. But and I think that's something about them that I admire deeply, their sense of really having good relations as best as they can, which often means you take the hit. The Amish are a great example of people who are not looking for an even score. And sometimes they get taken advantage of, but they kind of move forward and they leave it in God's hands to bring all things together. So I'm not saying this is an Amish story, it's not, but there's some themes that kind of carry forward a little bit that are true to all of us as people, followers of Christ.
Yeah, I appreciate that connection too. And I think people, especially when life just gets so hard, and times are hard right now, like we're filming this, things are just beginning to open up in different parts of the country, but it's people are tired of being inside their homes.
I know. Have you noticed that even the jokes, people aren't even sending around the funny jokes anymore? It's like,
it's kind of
run its course.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did have a connection with that, and it just kind of went right out of my head. But I think I think too, there's been that appreciation of what really matters and what's most important, and it is relationships. And we've seen that as we've not been able to be close to people and be out and like we're used to, and taking things for granted. And yeah,
These connections are really lifelines, aren't they? Zoom is a lifeline, and
yes,
there's our Bible study does it, our small group does it. And I find I just look forward to that all day long, that just seeing people's faces, and I like it. I hope there's silver linings. There's good.
There is. Absolutely.
I think what you mentioned, knowing what's most important is one of them. And I've noticed too, I don't know if you feel this way, but because you're home, you're paying attention to home. And I don't think my home has ever looked better. I mean, it's amazing. The gardens are really finally looking good, and I don't forget to water. And
that's cute. Yeah.
It takes time. I mean, it really does take time. It kind of goes back to the old order Amish, because they're really home based, and Dad is home, Dad's around, and you need that time to make our lives work.
Kept. Yeah.
We get a little out of our means, I think. Outside of our means, and I don't mean just money. I mean time. And
yeah, absolutely. But there is a little bit still of that with this story, because on this island, Three Sisters Island, it's not like their infrastructure is 100% solid all the time, right? They have brownouts and blackouts, and cell phones don't always work. So you still have a little bit of that technology thing going on, where they have technology, but it's not quite as dependable as in some other parts of the country.
Thank you for noticing that. Yeah, they're sort of the stepchild. And they have an old infrastructure that is not reliable at all, and that's part of the story, the overall story arc. From book 1 on. The oldest daughter is a bright, determined, ambitious young woman who's been working at an energy startup, and now she's trying to help bring renewable energy to the island, which is really kind of fun to study, living off the grid, how to make it work, how to make it. But at the same time, you just have so much resistance, because this is an island that's unwired. And, with that comes inconveniences, but it also keeps a way of life that a lot of people want to just keep it as is. So she's having a fight. Which makes for good dips and scenes.
Exactly. No, I just love it. I love it. So, Suzanne, thanks so much for coming on and talking about this kind of a new venture going into the romantic, contemporary romance, and I just love the whole idea about Maine and the islands and all of that, and the Three Sisters trying to, just come together with their dad. That's family's just always so important.
Yeah, and it's not easy.
It can be hard. It can.
Any age.
Yeah. So one question, I don't know whether you remember me asking you this last time, but the last question I always ask it's the last question I need to ask. Sometimes we do tend to go on and on and on after it. But anyway, when you're all done with the book, what do you do to unwind?
Well, I'm a tennis player, and I play a lot of tennis.
Wow.
I play quite a bit. Play USTA, and I play leagues. So USTA is a national competition, and it just is so much fun. I mostly play doubles. It's a great thing to age with, I think, and it keeps me so fit. I love it. I was noticing now during the pandemic where we couldn't play at all. Just this week it opened up where we can play.
Oh, good.
In the meantime, I've been hiking a lot with my friends, which is fun. Social distance hiking, really far, wide open spaces. But I got back to the tennis court, and all of a sudden I was sore. With serves and stuff like that. I thought, my legs are in great shape, my upper body. So it just made me appreciate it all the more, because it's just a fun sport. I just love it.
Oh, that's really great. That's a great answer. I don't think anyone else has ever said anything that even active before. Like, people talked about walking and things, but I'm not sure anyone has ever said anything about, actually engaging in a sport like that. That's really cool.
I get up really early so that I can hit my word count and then get to the court.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's a good
Wow.
incentive.
That's cool too. That's the incentive to get it done. Can I ask them about how many words you try to write when you're writing a story and you're in that mode? About how many words do you try to write a day?
I try to write about 1,500, and that's just creative writing. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that basic. But I have to admit, it doesn't mean it's great writing.
Right. Yeah.
Just kind of, sometimes it's just advancing the plot just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes back. But I feel like there's something about that measurement that helps me relax as I write. And once you relax, then you're more creative. And I'm a real believer in kind of that 20-mile march that sometime I can tell you probably know about, but it's to South America, the South Pole. It's called the 20-mile march. And
No, I don't know about that.
well, they're the two explorers, a Norwegian and an Englishman. And they had the same, starting at different points, but it was one winter, our summer, no, vice versa. Their summer or winter, when they were heading to the pole and to see who could get there first. So the Englishman had a very logical way that most writers work, which is he let the conditions drive. And when the weather was good, they marched. And when it wasn't, they hunkered down and they cleaned equipment and they fixed things and all. Then the Norwegian, he had a totally different point of view, and he had every single day, like a 15 to 20 mile march, rain or, sleet or snow or whatever, it was every single day. And he stopped even if they were making progress. So who would you think made it first?
I'm hoping it was the Norwegian.
Yes, it was the Norwegian. Made it first, made it back. The Englishman barely made it, came back, and I think they all perished within like 11 or 12 miles of a cache of food.
No.
But there's something about that just steady driving that I've taken into writing as part of that discipline of writing, and it really helps, because right now I'm doing 3 books a year, which is a lot. You're really moving along, and I hate that panicky feeling, because I want it to be good books. I want every single one to feel like I've done the best I could possibly do, and I hope that every book is better than the one right before it.
So I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, but I hate that panicky feeling too. Like you just.
Yeah. If I ever turn in a book that isn't my best, I feel like that's when I need to stop.
Yeah.
It's time for someone else to have a turn.
I totally get that. Yeah, because it is scary. I like that too, and I do have markers like that too when I'm actually writing, and I call it my discovery draft, because that gives me permission to tell instead of show, if I'm just trying to get into the story and figure it out and make mistakes and not do action beats. It's just, let's just keep the story going and then go back and fix it up. So
I love that. That's a great term for it. That just gives you freedom.
I do. I put it at the very top. It says discovery draft, and it does give me that freedom not to get so stuck, because I do tend to be very precise, and it's like, if that word's not right, I can't move on. And but if I do that, that's like, yes, I can, because I do need to get this many words written today. And I like to revise. I mean, I love to write. I love even more to revise.
Yeah. That's kind of the fun of it, almost like I think of it as I bake the cake and now I'm icing it.
Yes, yes. But the story's there, you got it, and now it's like, okay, let's get it all fancy.
Get it all prettied up.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again so much. I truly appreciate you being here, and it's wonderful. I love the scene outside your window.
It's a beautiful day today.
Beautiful day. Raining here, so yes, you're the one that gets the weather award today.
Yeah, today. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it, and hope we'll talk again.
Oh, I do too. Thank you, and thanks everybody for watching. We're really glad you're here. Bye, Suzanne, and bye, everybody.